Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 and a quarter. 325. High, but to get 3 and a quarter. But to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300.
And hello again from Addison, Texas, off the Dallas North Tollway, just minutes from downtown Dallas. It's April the 13th, 2020, and welcome to the Mike McGavel Jones Show. I'm Mike Jones. I'm going to be with you for a little while. We're going to talk about some current events, some things that are going on, some things that are going on in business, and just a general conversation, just kind of from the house, I guess you could say. We hope that you're all being very safe and conscious of where you are and maintaining the 6-foot rule. And as we come off of this Easter weekend, I would like to start out by sending some prayers to the folks over in Louisiana and Monroe. We've got some folks that have an office there. We also have folks down in Mississippi. Their offices were affected by this, or at least their area, their neighborhoods, and their friends down in the south central Mississippi area. And then also the Tennessee Valley, especially in Chattanooga. I understand we had some folks in Chattanooga that were in harm's way there. So we send our prayers and thoughts with all the folks across the southeast and the south that have been affected by the tornadoes in the last 24 hours. I did check on the Keith and Tanya Lowry over in Monroe. They own our United Country office over there. And we touched base with them this morning, and they let us know that the tornadoes basically had kind of split between them and just missed them barely. And now they're in cleaning up mode and helping their neighbors clean up their area. And so we send out our thoughts and prayers to them and thank them for helping with the cleanup and restoration of the Monroe area. It looked like a big mess. Seems, now that we have so much media coverage, it seems like we notice tornadoes and hurricanes and everything way more than we used to, because there seems like there's so many more. There's really not really that many more, I don't think. I think what it amounts to is just the coverage is more extensive when we see the damage a lot more. I hope you had a wonderful Easter celebration. I know a lot of you did have family over and did Easter egg hunts in the backyard. And I know the church services were quite interrupted, across the United States and abroad. And, the Pope was doing a one-man show. And that's kind of, it's kind of the way it is right now until we get past this pandemic. I think there's a lot of debate going on right now between the president and the medical people as to when's the right time to open up the markets. He's got support from some of the governors and no support from some of the others. And it's a slippery slope to be the president right now, because as bad as he would like to see the economy fixed, you don't want to open the doors too quick to the point where you're reinfecting more people or infecting people that had already gone through 2 or 3 months of isolation. So we have to be smart, and I'm totally in favor of being smart. But anyway, I hope you had a great Easter holiday, and we certainly did here, with my grandson's birthday being Saturday, and I'll mention that a little bit more. I would like to read something. I have a daily devotional that I have, and it's by a young lady named Sarah Young. Sarah's put this book together. It's called Jesus Calling. And I'm just going to start off the show today with this. You are mine for all time and beyond time, into eternity. No power can deny you your inheritance in heaven. I want you to realize how utterly secure you are, even if you falter as your journey through life. I will never let go of your hand. Knowing that your future is absolutely assured can free you to live abundantly today. I have prepared this day for you with the most tender concern and attention to detail. Instead of approaching the day as a blank page that you need to fill up, try living it in a responsive mode, being on the lookout for all that I am doing. This sounds easy, but it requires a deep level of trust based on the knowledge that my way is perfect. And that's from Peter and Psalms. I just wanted to kick the show off with that this morning. It's it's a beautiful day outside, but it's chilly in Dallas. We went from 75 to 80 degrees yesterday to basically in the upper 30s. I think it was 40 this morning when I got up. Of course, I get up at a kind of a crazy hour. It's almost still nighttime when I get up. I'd like to start off the show saying thank you to everyone who sent prayers and thoughts of healing and getting through this little situation that I had. You know, I appreciate the folks on Facebook sending on the messages. And there was a lot of them, a lot of encouragement this weekend. And it was a bit crazy as people were wondering how I damaged both of my feet at the same time. Well, I will tell you, it's probably not the best way to get started by saying that I was changing a light bulb. And so I guess I shouldn't change light bulbs. I should hire people to do these things. But anyway, I'm changing a light bulb, and unfortunately did not have a ladder, and I did not have a stool that I'd like to have had. So I did the best I could with what I had, and it wasn't good enough. And it decided it did not want to stand up for me, and it took me out. And I pretty well felt like I had broken my foot. And I did get some x-rays. And then within 24 or 36 hours, I had taken my other foot and rammed it into a massive chair leg, and did not break the toe or the joint, but came as close as you possibly can. So between the two, Saturday morning when I got up, I literally could not put my feet on the floor and stand up. I was talking to the doctor, and we were yesterday or Saturday, and he goes, "What's it feel like?" I said, "It feels like pins being put in a pin cushion." And of course, I went from a size 9.5 or 10 to a size 11 or 11.5 on my right foot. And that wasn't even the one that I originally hurt. So the bottom line is, Mackenzie, on Saturday, we had Landon's birthday party, and she said, "You need to go to the doctor, Dad." I said, "Well, I already have an appointment with the orthopedic surgeon at Plano Orthopedics on Monday." And then as the day went on, I could feel that it was just getting worse and worse and not getting better. And I needed to do something. So once we got through with the birthday cake and all the festivities, I did decide it was best to go to the doctor. And it proved to be correct. The anti-inflammatories helped. But I was literally shuffling around at high speed. I probably looked about 90 years old. And probably feel about 90 right now, but I think going to the doctor helped. They did a lot of other tests too. And of course, this is when you get to find out other things like, oh, by the way, you have arthritis in your body, and that's always an upper. But anyway, bottom line is, I think it's best when you start thinking you need to go to the doctor, just do it. It's not going to get better if you don't. Now I've got three or four medications that I'm taking, and now I've got something for pain, which that does help, and I can at least shuffle around without crawling, and that's a big upper. I do want to thank a lot of folks who reached out to me, that called me. Dan Duffy, our CEO of United Real Estate United, called me at the hospital, check in on me. Evidently his wife, Chris, saw it on Facebook, and so he checked on me, and then about 30 minutes later, our COO for United Real Estate, our urban brand, he called me and had seen it on Facebook, and they were just checking in on me, and I really appreciate that. You know, I had several people call, and then hundreds of people, 300 or 400 people, I guess, have sent prayers on Facebook, and I really appreciate that. My friends over at Three Forks, I was sitting literally in the hospital bed, and I get a phone call from the GM over there, Jason. And Jason called. Actually, he didn't call. He had somebody call because they were right in the middle of their rush for the evening. And but Jason Campbell and his staff offered to bring dinner to us. And you know, that just doesn't happen very many places. It happens sometimes in small towns. But I don't even remember that happening when I lived in a small town. But it was very appreciated. I thought that was very kind of them, and I haven't taken them up on it yet. I'm saving my moment for that. But thank them very much. And then also I've got some friends and neighbors around here that saw it. And I just want to say thank you very much for that, because kindness is something that you don't take for granted. The x-rays were negative. The feet aren't broken, but they are, as they say, as close to being broken as you can get. So you get all the great effects. You don't have to say that it's broken. So it is what it is. And we're just glad that that is over with and we can move on. I want to talk a little bit about fundraising events. We did talk last week, last week we talked about the other services that United Strategic Client Services offers, and that is in these types of times, we've been through them before with the RTC and the FDIC and the other recessions that we've had. Auctions are an answer to a prayer, actually, for a lot of people. They can help people get in a good place. And so we know that we offer services that people need, especially if they have assets they need to have sold, if they have real estate that they need to have sold quickly because they do not have time for the sales process. Maybe they don't have 90 days or 6 months in order to list a property. In this particular marketplace, we do not have we just don't have the ability to know what the prices are going to be right now. And it looks like I've got a little visitor that just went on the camera. That was Landon. And, but anyway, we want to take advantage of the auction method of marketing, whether it's online or live. It's a good time to take advantage of it. The good thing about an auction is it's immediate, and we are able to take the asset to the market and let the market respond to it. So if someone has a situation like that, just let us know. Now, in regard to benefits and fundraisers, this is uncharted territory because it has been the fastest growing method of raising money for 501c3s, private schools, parent-teacher organizations, children's hospitals, St. Jude, Scottish Rite, all these other areas of fundraising. I think what's happened is we've gotten so comfortable with the live auction and the silent auction and the big board and the raise the paddle or fund a need that no one ever imagined that we could have something like a pandemic. And so because it's uncharted territory, a couple of things have happened. Number one, some of these organizations are in dire straits. I have said before, and I stand by it, that there'll be consolidation and there'll be some changes in the marketplace. But the other thing is there's some new opportunities too, in the technology space and also from a live auctioneer perspective. If you're an auctioneer and you can provide an auction without a room full of people, there are some benefits to that, especially in this current situation. So, for example, what are the benefits to an auction that is technology based and can still be visual? You can do AV. You have all the videos. You have basically every component, except you just don't have a room full of people. The people are off site. They're having watching parties. I know that we've had some auctioneers do these where they have watch parties, although you have to limit the number of people who watch. So we have been talking to several providers of technology in the regard to the cameras and the studios and things of that nature. We have secured some opportunities. So if you are one of our clients and you do need an answer of what you can do, I mean, if I'm a CEO or an executive director of a 501c3 right now, I've got to be telling myself, I hope this pandemic is over by May 1st or June 1st at the absolute latest. Now, the concern I have is what if it doesn't happen? We own 2 auctioneering schools. They require class participation. And, if we're limited to 10 people in a room, that's going to hinder whether we can have auction school at this time. So we're having to look at our schedule. I actually was on the phone with our ownership group this morning as we were discussed what our options were for May and June. And I think what we're going to do is, in regard to America's Auction Academy, which right now is tentatively scheduled for May 31st, and then Worldwide College, which is later in the month of June, we'll make an announcement probably after May 1st as to what our schedule is going to be. We will have auction school in Dallas. We will have auction school in Denver, and we will have auction school in Iowa before the end of the year. So it may be the fourth quarter. We may be having auction school in December, but I just want to let the world know that we are looking at the schedule. We will keep people posted. We did have an advanced bid calling seminar scheduled for May in Dallas, and it was going to be in conjunction with the World Auto Auctioneer Championship that Paul Bear puts on. And because it just would work well, we'd have a lot of people already in town, and we could do it within a week of each other. But you know, they've canceled their event. We've canceled that event. We will be having an advanced bid calling session with some of the greatest auctioneers in the world, but it will be delayed for some period of time until we can see what the right time is. It may be July or August. You know, there's not a lot of things that go on in July and August except vacations. And I think by the time we get to June or July, everybody's going to be pretty much feeling like they've had too much vacation time already, and we'll be back into work mode. And I would predict a lot of vacations are not going to take place this year. Maybe as we get towards Christmas in the wintertime, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of travel activity in the area of vacations unless it's just something somebody's paid for and they can't get out of it. I do believe that it's going to heavily affect the hotel and motel and recreational travel business, and we'll see where that goes, right? So in regard to a virtual auction, I do want to talk about that some more. I do have a great relationship with Real Communications here in Dallas. The folks over there, Jeff Crilly, the owner of the company, and our very close friends, and they produce this show on a regular basis. And so we have tentatively agreed to a program where we can do virtual auctions through him in his studios here in Dallas, and we can conduct auctions anywhere in the country from that studio. Doesn't matter where the event is, which is exactly what's taking place in some other cities and states right now. California's doing it, Florida's doing it. I think the thing you need to understand is there's some keys to it. The technology piece, you're going to have a technology piece, but we already use technology in our other auctions, so it's not a big step. The technology, we've almost come to the point where technology, we used to kid about when it became a commodity. You know, back in the day, all the technology for auctions was proprietary. You had to basically build your own, pay somebody to build it. It was not something that you could just buy. And now we live in a different situation altogether. You can pretty much buy anything you want. You can buy it with a white label if you need to. And so we've come to that realization. When we do a virtual auction, we do all the same steps that we would normally do, but here's the deal. From a client standpoint, you've eliminated the cost of a venue. So if you are going to an Omni or a Hilton property or the Renaissance or one of these properties in Dallas or down in Houston, any of the big properties, it's not uncommon to spend anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000. Well, you've just eliminated that. So that's that much money you don't have to make in order to cover it. You can be pickier about the items you sell. Quite frankly, you can do a silent auction or not do a silent auction. You know, I've kind of come to the conclusion myself. Now, this is me talking. I'm not telling my clients, hey, don't do a silent auction. But if your silent auction is taking up 90% of your work and you're getting 10% of the return, then I'm not a big fan of a silent auction. I would rather have a live auction with a fund-to-need component and maybe a big board that is also part of the online component. and be done with it. I think it's more efficient. I think from a labor standpoint, it's better. And if you're an all volunteer organization, one of the reasons a lot of people don't like to volunteer for events is because they work themselves to death. It's really easy to be a chairman of a committee that has 10 or 15 people putting it together. But if you're there to have a good time and you've got a kid going to the school, or you've got, you're looking forward to the event all year long, but then you end up spending the entire evening and the 2 days before setting up the silent auction, and then when it's over, you're picking up a third of it because nobody bid on it. I don't think that's a very good investment in time or effort. Nor do I think it creates a lot of goodwill with the people that are working. It's my opinion. You can do with it as you wish. I know there's a lot of auctioneers that watch this and they listen to what I say, and they may agree with me or they may not. But after 40 years of doing this, I do have an opinion, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'd say better live auction items, unique items, things that matter, social events, whether, there's a lot of trips to wineries. There's a lot of trips to New York. There's a lot of trips to Chicago. But the good news is those are places people want to go. There's always going to be 50 people in the room or 100 people in the room that would like to go to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, the wine country. But maybe you need to venture into some new ideas, go to the Grand Tetons. Of course, there's tons of Costa Rican trips available and stuff like that. But if I were going to have an auction tomorrow and it were my auction, I'd be trying to go with a totally unique and different type of trips and memories. I think the couples trips are great. I think the group trips of, say, 3 couples, I think those are great. You can't go wrong with something like Hawaii, because Hawaii's gotten easy to get to now. It used to be Hawaii was a trip of a lifetime. Now Southwest can get you there in a day, and it's just not that, it's just not that cumbersome. Travel is much easier if you could travel. You can't do it right now, but this is going to be over, guys. In another 6 or 8 weeks, I'm confident we'll be moving on. We'll be talking about something else. My biggest concern right now is the small business person. I know the government's made a lot of promises as far as loans and grants. That's only going to meet and reach a certain number of people. There's a lot of people that don't qualify for that. And so you're going to see an increase in bankruptcies and things of that nature. That could also impact some of these companies that provide trips for the auctions for fundraising. And I've also heard through the grapevine, there's 1 or 2 companies that kind of are in trouble right now. Maybe they have been paid, but have not provided the services. So all I would say is make sure that if you are a client of mine or someone else's, that you feel very comfortable with the company, that they are triple rated in a positive way, that you can pick up the phone and call a couple of references that have worked with them in the last 3 months to make sure, or the last 6 months anyway, to make sure that they're providing the services that they need to. It's imperative that we keep the integrity of the trips that we sell at fundraising events. So just keep your eye on that. Also, watch your social media. If you're an auctioneer, keep an eye on these chat groups so that you know what's going on. You don't want to be the last one to know that someone has lost control of their business and they are no longer, I won't say as ethical as they were, because sometimes ethics doesn't have anything to do with the economy. It's just circumstance. Bad things happen to good people. And so just keep an eye on that, and everyone should share about it. When you're talking about a virtual auction, you're going to be learning how we would handle the strategy on the auction, auction setup, the timing. I was talking to my good friend Scott Robertson a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how much time he invests in one of these. We actually, as auctioneers, invest more time in a virtual auction than we will in a regular live auction. In a regular live auction, we will organize the live auction. we personally do not provide software, so that's not my area of expertise. It's not something I want to do. If I want to, I'll hire people to do it. But his point was, you end up going to the event or the venue, wherever you're going to do this, whether it's a studio or the school, could be on the stage at the school, because there's a lot of schools that have their event in their gymnasiums or their special rooms that they use for special events. And he was telling me that he'll normally go in early. He will spend hours and hours in preparation. He'll leave for about an hour and then he'll come back. But he'll end up probably investing 3 times, maybe 4 times as much actual time in a virtual auction in preparation. Everything from the scripts, if there's an MC, does the auctioneer do the MC work, or is an MC provided? That all has to be worked out. And you know, here again, it's a movie studio type presentation. So you're dealing with cameras, you're dealing with a stage, and you're still dealing with people. And then you also have to have a good flow. It has to have a great flow to the event. Your timing is very important. You cannot have downtime. You can't have a 5-hour virtual auction. It will not work. You need to be able to go on at 6, 5:30, 6, 7 o'clock, and be done within an hour to an hour and a half max. It shouldn't even go an hour and a half, because you're not serving dinner. You know, you're basically telling them, hey, sit in front of your television or your computer, have a pizza, make you a steak, whatever you want to do. But we're going to start this auction at 6 and be done by 7. If you can do it in less time, even better. The challenge with that is you're dealing with technology and time. So you have to allow for more time for the bids to process and for the bids to come in. You could also offer by request. You could also offer some type of telephone bidding, I believe. That could be done, especially on your big items. If you have 5 to 10 major items, maybe you offer telephone bidding for some of the bigger items that are going to be, I mean, look, I sell, some of my events will sell something for $50,000, $100,000, $125,000. You can certainly justify having your big buyers that buy every year, whether it's a Cattle Barons Ball or a American Heart Association or SPCA, any of these major events. If you've got something major, you need to do everything you can to accommodate your big bidders, because they've been carrying the load. This is your opportunity to kind of baby them a little bit, because they're not all, some of your big bidders, they're not big computer people. They're really good at having money and having other people do a lot of work for them. And they don't always spend a lot of time in front of the camera. I'm not saying some people don't. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of philanthropic folks here in Dallas and Houston and Austin. You know, we are becoming a computer age, but not everybody's there yet. So I'm just saying you should accommodate whoever, whenever you need to. Providing the auctioneer, you're going to help with the script. You may have to write the script. If you've never written one, you may have to learn how to write one. Collection of funds. How are the funds going to be? Helping the client with the terms and conditions, because your terms and conditions are going to be slightly different, because it's not like they're going to walk up and pay at the end of the night. If you're going to take credit cards ahead of time to where you can just run their credit card, that's great. Then you're just generating statements, paid statements, where they can either pick up the merchandise, and you may have to designate certain times for people to come get their merchandise or their packages, or maybe it's done through the mail, or it's done through FedEx or whatever. You just want to make sure that you're timely in providing them with whatever they've done, because people are antsy anyway. Some people are skeptical about anything they're not standing there doing themselves and signing. So you need to make it as clear as possible that they're going to receive what they're supposed to get right after the auction. Also, I want to tell my clients, and then anyone else out there, that if you have an organization that is, let's say, hurting for cash, let's just say you're the CEO or the executive director and you're concerned about making payroll. Maybe you're concerned about buying dog food or cat food or providing those services that are so badly needed. And you wake up and the checkbook's about empty. You know, the accounts are getting low. The volunteers can only do so much. You've got a job to do. You'd like to get paid. You may have to look at other ways to generate funds. There are a lot of organizations that own a lot of other assets other than just one location or one office. In some cases, I know some schools that own multiple properties that they've either bought for expansion or they have they've had it donated to them. I know a lot of the charitable groups have received donations. I've been called in by some of the nationwide groups and where they go, hey, Mike, we've got 2 houses down in Austin, Texas that have been donated to us. Could you sell those for us? Or could you oversee the sale of these assets? And we certainly want to let them know that we can. And we want any clients that happen to be watching right now, contact us and we'll be happy to help you. So whether it's, if you're in a critical need for funds and you have surplus real estate or non-critical assets, look around, see what you have that you don't need. If you've got 5 horse trailers and you only need 1 or 2, maybe you sell 3. Well, we can handle that. We can do that through an online or a live auction or a combination of both. But that's what United SCS and United Classic Auctioneers does. We do these things. We sell assets and we sell all kinds. You have to remember that the United real estate brand between United Country and United Real Estate will sell anywhere from $5 to $8 billion worth of real estate a year. That's billion with a B. And about 15 to 20% of that is going to be at auction. So keep that number in mind. You know, we're the largest recreational property sales company in the United States. And we're also in Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico. We have office relationships in Australia, Saudi Arabia, and China. So we can sell pretty much anywhere you want to go. If you have something, or maybe you have property in your portfolio you need to move, keep us in mind for sure. Also, our SCS brand sells manufacturing equipment. We do appraisals. In fact, I was contacted over the weekend to do 3 company appraisals this week in the North Texas area. But I've also gone all over the United States doing appraisals, site visits to verify that assets are where they're supposed to be, valuations. We can do the valuation. We can do a sales presentation if we need to. We can actually conduct a sale of online or live auction, and we can do sealed bid. We can do a combination of all of these in short order. If you have timberland, that's certainly something that our company sells a lot of. And we have a great relationship with Realtree. If you're familiar with Realtree, you're going to find their products in Walmart, along with multiple other locations. They're in hundreds of stores, if not thousands, around the world. And Realtree, of course, one of the #1 camouflage branded companies in the world. And you might be sitting in a 4-wheeler and check out the camouflage and see that it says Realtree on it. But we have a great relationship with Realtree, and if you have property, you need to talk to us because we'll certainly be willing to visit with you about that relationship. Also, I want to remind you again this week that we have this auction coming up. It's a traditional sale right now, but it will go auction. Any property that's not sold prior to auction will go to auction, and this is in Battlement Mesa. Battlement Mesa is in Colorado, between Grand Junction and Aspen, Colorado, and you know what the price range is for property in Aspen is. This is a perfect location right between the 2 towns, only about 50 miles away from Grand Junction, and there should be somewhere around 35 to 40 properties in that auction, and it's all kinds of development property. There's elk hunting land, about 900 to 1,000 acres. It is a superior piece of property in a unique location. And the nice thing about it is it's affordable. So if you have a family and you'd like to get them away from the city, and get them in a more of a rural community, but with all the amenities, you might want to look at Battlement Mesa. It would be a great place to retire or raise kids. And our good friend Gary Hubble and Jake, his son, are handling that on a local basis, and they're working with SCS to conduct that sale. So what is the website for that? www.battlement, BATTLEMENT, Mesa, MESA.com. Check it out. It's going to be a great auction and a great sale. There's some great property available right now if you're interested in it. So we can sell anything for you and be happy to show you what we have. Also, United Country and United Real Estate sells tens of thousands of properties every year. So whether it's I just want to remind you, we have over 500 rural offices everywhere from Cameron, Missouri to small towns across the United States. It truly is America's Main Street real estate company. And then we have our United Real Estate offices, which are located across the United States in major cities. So whether you're in Washington, D.C., in the D.C. area, if you're in Beverly Hills, or you're in Phoenix, or you're in Denver, or you're in Dallas, all these locations have a United Real Estate office. The original United Real Estate office is located in the Lincoln Center here in Dallas at the corner of LBJ and the Dallas North Tollway. And the reason I mention that is that's where my office is, and that's normally where we produce this show, in the studios there. And we'll be back up and running there again soon, but that is our very first office. We have about 125 or more of the United Real Estate offices. So it gives us a total of about 650, maybe close to 700, I don't know exactly right now, offices across the United States. So we have a lot of any type of property you want to buy. If you want to buy urban, you want to buy residential, you want to buy farm, land, mountain, water, or commercial, we got you covered. Our United SCS brand is bringing in a very well experienced commercial broker that's here in Dallas, who's been in business a long time. And we're just sewing that up right now, and he'll be joining us in the next 30 to 45 days. So we're excited to announce that. And then, of course, don't forget, we have a wonderful relationship with the Dallas Bankers Club. Dean, my buddy with the Dallas Bankers Club, who started it, he and I talked yesterday, and we're going to be talking again this week. United SCS is the official auction company for the Dallas Bankers Club. And these are all senior level bankers. Most of them are over the age of 55, unless they're just at a super high level and they're younger. But there's no branch bankers or anybody like that. These are all people that are in the upper echelon of all the major banks across the United States and in the world. And we meet about every 2 or 3 months. And they have asked me to join them as one of their advisors. We're going to do a major charity event later this year. I believe it's in October or November. They're going to I think they've shorted up the date, and we'll make the announcement later. But for the Mary Crowley Cancer Research Center. So I wanted to make that quick announcement, let people be thinking about being a part of that. I'm excited that they invited me to be a part of it. That's kind of what we got going on right now. I don't know. What's the time right now, Trent? 11:50. Okay. Well, tell you what I want to talk about right now. This is something that sits in my home, and I just love this piece of memorabilia. And for those that have attended the National Auctioneers Association Conference and Show over the years, you've probably seen this if you were in Michigan back in 1999. And I bought this at the 50th anniversary in 1999 in Grand Rapids. It was donated by the Mississippi Auctioneers Association. And the commissioner for the state of Mississippi at that time for the Auctioneers Commission was Larry McCool. And of course, for those of you in the auction business, you would remember that Larry McCool was the president prior to myself. And then, of course, Larry passed away in 2003. Lori and I did go to Mississippi and stay there for 3 months and handled the liquidation of his estate. We sold all of his collectibles and his vehicles and home and everything to settle the estate. And that was an honor that we did not want to do. And in fact, I couldn't believe it when he asked me to do it. But he was a great guy. Larry McCool was a great man and a great auctioneer, phenomenal auctioneer, who's now in the National Auctioneers Hall of Fame, and I was proud to induct him. Having said that, one of the things that Larry was very good at was securing autographed guitars. And I actually believe that this guitar that's behind me was not secured by Larry, but in fact, I think that Marvin Alexander, if I'm not mistaken, someone in his family or his secretary, maybe a family member, was connected and was able to help secure this guitar. So it was either McCool or Marvin Alexander, because Marvin was very involved with the Tennessee Auctioneers Association. So I want to make sure I got my facts straight. But anyway, they got, because they had a relationship with George's secretary, they were able to get this signed, and it was donated by the Tennessee Auctioneers Association. And so it came with a letter of authenticity, which you can see behind me, and I know it's a little bit, you can't read it, but basically what it says, and it's from George, it's what it says. Congratulations, National Auctioneers Association, on your 50th anniversary, held in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's dated, and it's on his letterhead. And if you remember George Jones, if you're a country music fan, he had a song called I Don't Need No Rocking Chair. And that's the I Don't Need No Rocking Chair stationery, which has the rocking chair and a slash through it saying, no, I don't need one. And anyway, the cool thing about this is, a lot of these guitars that the artists sign, they're not very expensive guitars. In fact, a lot of them are $150, $200 guitars. Well, this is not a $150 guitar. This is a Gene Larrivee studio guitar, and the neat thing about that is it's a good studio guitar. But this morning, before I got on the show, I just looked it up. This guitar today, if you went to buy this guitar today, you'd pay probably over $2,000 for this guitar. Now, the fact that this guitar, it goes back to 1999, it's got a little age on it, 21 years old, and it's signed by George Jones. I don't know exactly what it's worth. Probably the only way you'd find out is if you put it up for sale. The great thing is it's got its provenance. It tells you where it came from. It tells you, got a letter from George Jones saying that he signed it. So that's pretty cool. The night of the fun auction, future NAA Hall of Fame member Jerry King from Asheville, North Carolina, was on stage, and Jerry's an accomplished guitar player, and his son, of course, has played music and played at the Grand Ole Opry, and so Jerry played the guitar for us that night, and so it was a good setup. And then it started out, the biddings took off, and funny thing is that another future NAA Hall of Famer, Jasper Jones from Memphis. Of course, a lot of people remember Jasper Jones. He ran Delta Auction Company for many years, and then John Roebuck bought him out. But Jasper and I were good friends. Jasper and I were buddies, and I thought the world of Jasper. And I loved him to death until that night. And that's when he decided, he saw me bidding on that guitar, and he started bidding on that guitar. And Jasper was from Memphis. And we just started going back and forth. And he'd look over at me, and he'd bid, and he'd just smile at me. And, it started out around 500 and went to 750 and 1,000 and 12 and a half, 15, 1750, 2,000, 22 and a half, 2,500, 2,750, 3,000, 32 and a half, 3,500. And Jasper just kept looking over at me. He just keep putting his hand up, because I think he kind of knew that I was pretty set on buying that thing. Anyway, we got up to around $4,000, and it either ended at $4,000 or $4,500. I don't have the receipt on me, but I can tell you it was $4,000 or more. And then he just looked at me and just kind of laughed, because that's kind of what you do when you run somebody up at an auction. And, you know, the money, the association needed the money, and I'm glad that we were able to give the money to the organization. And of course, it is one of my favorite pieces of collectible memorabilia here at, I like to call it Casa Jones. And so, that was a really neat deal. Well, about 3 weeks later, because that would have been around the 16th, I guess, of July, 16th or 17th. That's usually the way things fell. On August the 21st, I knew that George Jones was coming to Fort Worth, and so I looked it up, and he was going to be appearing. This is back when we call them record stores. And for those kids on the show today that have never seen a record store or know what a record store is, you should look it up. They were really cool places. It was a great place to kill time and see a lot of really neat recordings and artwork on LPs and things of that nature. I spent hours and hours and hours in vinyl record stores when I was a kid. But anyway, Hastings over off Camp Bowie Boulevard was hosting George Jones. And George had just had a wreck about 3 or 4 months earlier and almost got killed. I think he'd had, it was pretty well recorded that he'd had a little bit to drink and hit a bridge and was hospitalized. And, they were really concerned that he would even make it out of that. Ironically, the name of his album that was coming out was called Choices. Ironically, I think that's pretty ironic that that would be and if you hear the tunes, you'll understand why. And as you can see behind me, when the guitar was already signed, and right here is a picture of me and him and the guitar. I had an opportunity to get a photo with him. This was 3 weeks after our convention, but he signed the Choices CD, and he signed the cover for me. And then I picked this up somewhere. I think someone put this photo of George in a fun auction at the Texas Auction Academy. And the thing I always appreciate is the fact that this signature, that signature, that signature, and that one all match. And that always helps authenticate everything that you have. So anyway, he was there, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me to see George. Now, I had met George in 1970 at Panther Hall in Fort Worth, Texas. And if you're old enough to remember Panther Hall, it was a domed building, and it was really cool. It was a dance hall. And it's where all the famous country and Western acts and other acts would come through. If they were a major music person, they would come through. Panther Hall wasn't a huge place, but it was a cool place. So you had Dewey Groom's ballroom over in Dallas, but you had Panther Hall over in Fort Worth. So a lot of the performers would go to Fort Worth and then come over to Dallas and play. Well, in 1970, that was about that period of about 4 or 5 years. My grandparents were at Panther Hall almost every weekend. They were big dancers. They loved to dance. They loved to waltz. And so they had taken me to meet George Jones. And so that was the first time I met George. He signed my autograph book. And it just meant everything to me, because I was a big music buff, even at 10 or 11 years old. I was hooked on music. And so Tammy Wynette and George were married, and they were traveling, and she was pregnant at the time with Georgette Jones. And she was just not very far from giving birth. Anyway, she was morning sick. She did not perform that night. George did a double set, and then they had some other folks that performed that evening. For those that remember, Bill Mack from WBAP Radio, Bill Mack was quite the big deal in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. He was called the Midnight Cowboy. That was his tag name. And he would go on the air about, 11 or 12 o'clock at night. He would play for the truck drivers all across the United States and Mexico on the great WBAP over in Fort Worth, Texas. And so he would do the Midnight Cowboy show. And he would, most of the time when a star was traveling through Dallas-Fort Worth, they would take their bus over to WBAP, and they would go on the air with Bill at night, or wherever Bill was, because sometimes he would actually do his show from a truck stop. But most of the time he's in studio. But I remember one night I was in Houston, Texas. That's when I was living in Houston, going to high school. And I was listening to WBAP. It was probably 1 o'clock in the morning. And they were talking about Ernest Tubb coming in and being in studio with Bill Mack. And I was getting ready to leave to drive to Dallas. And so I remember calling in as a caller and talking to Ernest Tubb and Bill Mack on my way up. You know, I had known earlier, many years earlier, that Bill Mack lived next door to my mother in Wichita Falls when I was a baby. And so I already had an affinity for and an interest and a liking of Bill Mack. And then over the years, I got to know Bill Mack. But back to Panther Hall. So Bill Mack is the announcer on Saturday night shows. That was the premiere night. And then that's where my grandparents went, and they got to be friends with Ernest Tubb and Willie Nelson and Loretta Lynn and Jerry Lee Lewis and his sister and mother. And my grandparents were just very lovely people, and people just liked them, you know, and they migrated to my grandfather. So he introduced me to George Jones that night, and he signed my autograph book, and I cherish that. In fact, I was just looking at it just last week. I came across it and was thinking about how neat that was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, just almost right now. So I saw George several times as I was growing up, and towards the end of his career, you know, as most legendary singers go, they start faltering and they start having issues with dementia. You know, I don't remember what year it was, probably 14, 15 years ago, maybe a year or two, longer than that, but around that time, during auction school, Loretta Lynn, Merle Haggard, and George Jones all performed at Bass Hall in Fort Worth in 1 week. And I had tickets for every show. And I remember with George, he was having a hard time remembering the lyrics. And he always had a young man standing off to the side of him, blonde-headed guy that sounded just like him and knew all the words. And George would be playing, and he'd look over at him, and then he'd give him the words, and George would do them. But George was having a tough time. He was dealing with some of that. And so he wasn't at his best towards the end, but I certainly enjoyed watching him for 35, 40 years. Having said that, Lori did buy me tickets for George's last show in Nashville, Tennessee. And I will tell you, she paid about as much for those tickets as that guitar cost, because it was supposed to be the last show. And true to form, as you would expect George Jones to do, he was a no-show, because George passed away right before that event. And I really hated to miss it, but then I thought, you know what? I'd seen him 2 or 3 times, and I saw him when he was great. And it was really a pleasure to have the opportunity to do that. For a guy from Beaumont, Texas, he did have quite a career. So George Jones, we salute him. I'm going to read you one other thing real quick, if you don't mind, before I close this thing out today. And I think it's funny because in the first line, it references choice. And since George did the song Choices, here we go. Trusting me is a moment-by-moment choice. My people have not always understood this truth. After I performed miracles in the wilderness, my chosen children trusted me intensely, but only temporarily. Soon the grumbling began again, testing my patience to the utmost. Isn't it often the same way with you? You trust me when things go well, when you see me working on your behalf. This type of trust flows readily within you, requiring no exertion of your will. When things go wrong, your trust flow slows down, and solidifies. You are forced to choose between trusting me intentionally or rebelling, resenting my ways with you. This choice constitutes a fork in the road. Stay on the path of life with me, enjoying my presence. Choose to trust me in all circumstances. That's from Exodus and Psalm. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the show today. We covered a little bit of everything, kind of squirrely moments, I guess, but that's kind of half the fun from doing it at home. I hope you enjoyed the show, the Mike McGavel Jones Show, on this day in April. And just know that we hope that you're taking care of yourself. Try to be safe. Stay at home as much as you can. Protect your family and your loved ones because there's no point in taking risks that you don't have to take. May God bless each and every one of you and your family members, and may God bless the United States of America. We bid you adieu from Addison, Texas, and until next time, we thank you for being a part of this one. We'll see you. God bless. Bye-bye.